Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! I used to work for a married couple, Billy, male 52, and Gigi, female 44, who owned the business, services/public relations agency. It lasted more or less for a year. They seemed nice and humble, but in reality, they were shady and untruthful. The company began to falter because of poor management and zero intention to prioritize. Billy was your baby-faced next-door neighbor type. He looked about 10 years younger and had a kind smile. He was soft-spoken and had an artistic and creative flair to him. Gigi looked matronly with a Mother Earth incarnate attitude toward her children. She prided herself on being ruthless when it came to giving her family only the best. She could be really nice when she wanted to, but I found out early on that she was 100% apt to gossip and being two-faced. The company's constant changes were a red flag. They went from business services plus PR agency to IT provider to a business incubator to indie beer partners. What I'm trying to say is that they tried to dip their donuts on everyone's coffee, figuratively. Some of us had no real way to escape. The lady working next to me was already 67 years old and scared that no one would hire her. I wasn't in a great place either. We were 8 employees in total, and they wouldn't lay anyone off because they believed that the employee should quit. They paid us only a portion of our salaries in complete weekly payments. Employees would run for the hills once they found a better job. Some of us were stuck. It was horrible. Then they would pay the normal rate for a month and then do it again. They never cut down on their luxury expenses, so the wife would boast her shopping sprees or arrive in a new car like it was nothing. Zero empathy and very insensitive. The husband was obsessed with making it big time, so much that he sometimes failed to see an opportunity right in front of him. He said he was Coca-Cola's brand manager, and I swear I looked it up and could never find any reference. Gigi had a display full of small local magazines, mostly about design and architecture. They were very proud to be a team member, but in reality, they just helped them print 2 issues. They wanted big business only, but in the meantime, looked down upon tangible potential clients. Like the young Latino couple who showed up trying to learn more about their services. They seemed lost because they wanted someone to help them set up a coffee business and had no idea how it was done. I talked to them and helped them into the waiting room. They even showed up with their baby in a stroller. That means they must have driven by and decided to come in. An impulsive client should be retained. The guy said his grandpa had a farm and he wanted to create an import/export company. Once Billy showed up, he listened for a bit, then kind of gave them a kind of abrupt dismissal. That was a jerk move because that couple opened their own business with someone else and even have a Facebook page. It could have been Billy. Billy lined his office walls with posters of Steve Jobs and Elon Musk. His wife, the chief enabling officer, put up signs on each room. The main employee area was a machine room. Billy's office was a chamber. The conference room was a meeting of the minds. Every time an employee disagreed with Billy during a brainstorming session, Gigi would call them aside and tell them that Billy is your boss. You need to know that he's brilliant and a genius. I want him to have that taste of success. I experienced that firsthand. I also hated brainstorming because that was never on my job description. They just wanted to pick everyone's brains. In the meantime, we had to see the Pandora jewelry, the expensive makeovers for their daughters, and a weekend at the spa updates on Facebook. Gigi's captions were usually about rewarding herself after a hard week or because she deserved it. Oh, and I'd like to mention that they bought into the social guru phrases about emotional direction. So if an employee ever got angry, Gigi would tell you, remember, the one who gets angry is the one who ends up losing. For anyone who's been in this situation, you may understand how painful it can be. You cannot leave a job because you have no other job waiting for you. And pathetic as it may sound to some income is better than no income at all. This is an involuntary compromise and it's abusive. Why were we expected to pay for their luxuries via incomplete wages? My best friend's ex is into coding and programming and he agreed to help. If it didn't work out, at least we would have something to laugh about. We created the kickbutt fake website with a matching LinkedIn and the whole 9 yards. To make a long story short, this was supposed to be an investment company and my friend would be very casual, nothing too eager. He started by liking my employer's Facebook page, then comment. Before we knew it, my boss took the bait and was engaging. They exchanged emails and he was eager to share all his projects and ambitious crap. On the other side, the investor sent him a list of requirements, like proof of concept, employer payroll, EIN number, etc. and so on. The investor agreed to work with him if they could prove they were legit and up to date. No bank account or confidential information was asked. Within 3 weeks, I was paid the equivalent to the 2 months and a half I was owed. The investor did an about face and never contacted him again. I left the job as soon as I could. My friend who remained until she got paid told me our boss seemed off and a bit down after he announced big things are coming, but it all seemed to deflate. I never disclosed what was really going on. Edit. My boss wasn't scammed into paying money to the fake website. He was catfished into getting up to date with employees' salaries that he owed. Another edit. For anyone who doesn't understand the story, no money was paid, asked from, or wired from my boss to the investor. We painted his greedy character and told him that if he could prove everything was in order, the investment would happen. This included the payroll. No confidential info was asked nor offered, seen or reviewed. He paid everyone what he owed them. The payment was made to each worker as normally. No one stole money via any website. He just made the diligence. EIN numbers and what we asked are not confidential. I worked for a major regional airline as an aircraft maintenance engineer at their heavy maintenance base. Being located in a regional center, we had a relatively tight-knit workforce. We were all a big family, but as families go, there were some personalities that just did not get along. Others that just did stupid stuff without thinking. In the break room above the sink, there was a board with hooks on it for us to hang mugs if we had them. I decided to bring in a mug from home. Just your standard plain blue colored mug. I would hang it on the same hook every time as others had done with their own personal mugs. A couple of years passed and the company purchased some mugs and glassware for the break room and meeting room. Management asked us not to leave any cups or mugs in the sink or on any of the benches. Coincidentally, the mugs they bought were the very same type and color as my mug. So I thought the safest thing to do was write my name on my mug so it would not get confused by the cleaners as one of the companies. I took a black marker and wrote my name on the bottom. Not long after this, on one particular day, I went in for a smoke and went to get my mug for some tea, only to find it missing from the hook. After a brief search, I found it out in the hanger on a bench. I took it back, cleaned it up, and thought not much more of it. A few days later, it happened again. This time, it was left in the sink. Whatever. Wash, use, put it back on a hook like always. This pattern of my specific mug being used by someone and left in random places. This had to stop. I tried writing my name in big letters on the outside of the mug. It still would go walkabout. I would leave a post-it note in the mug saying not to use it. I would find it sitting in the sink half full of cold coffee. I got the label maker and made a large day-glow orange sticker with my name on it with biohazard symbols as a bit of a joke. This time it completely disappeared. This was frustrating for me and amusing to my shift crew. I had just about enough and decided to end this game of cat and mug. Anyone who works in aviation maintenance knows that most large aircraft use a hydraulic fluid called Skydrol. To explain, this synthetic oil supposedly is safe to use and handle, but in reality is not nice stuff. If you were to get some on your hands, you would experience a slight warming sensation leading to a mild sting. Any cuts or breaks in the skin of your hands or fingers would almost instantly sting with contact with this fluid. Softer skin, armpits, or genitalia, if you were unlucky, was even more sensitive. If you got this stuff in your eyes, it was an agony that simply water would take minutes to abate. With this being said, the MSDS listed no toxicity or adverse effects short or long terms. Minor discomfort with skin contact was the only detrimental effect listed. After consulting the MSDS to confirm this fluid was non-toxic, I decided to bring in another mug from home and leave it on my hook as usual. But this time was a little surprise smeared strategically around the rim. The trap was set. Sure enough, the next day I came into work to find my mug missing again. No one owned up. It was a bit of an anti-climax, but mug number 3 did not go missing again. A few months went by and we were having some beers with the other shift crews. I was chatting with this bloke who was known for being extremely laid back, but also for having multiple used mugs on his toolbox. I told him about the problem I was having with my mug going missing all the time, and he told me that someone must have spiked a mug on him for no reason. I asked what it was, and he said he wanted a cup of coffee and took a mug out of the break room, and after a few sips he wondered what the weird taste was. That quickly led to his lips feeling like they were on fire. He said he dropped the mug in his haste to get to the bathroom to try and wash his face. Washing with water simply spread the burning sensation further around his face. He said that he never took another mug from the break room again. I told him it was me, and we both had a laugh. He took it like a champ and never borrowed anyone's mug ever again. This happened at a Walmart a while back, and it was one of those experiences that make you lose a little faith in humanity, but also find some hope in unexpected places. So, I've been in a wheelchair since I was 13 due to a car accident. It's been a journey, but I've learned to live with my disability and not let it define me. I am pretty independent, all things considered, and I can handle most day-to-day tasks just fine. The story involves me, a caring couple I wish I never met, and a few unexpected heroes. As I said, I was at Walmart one day, navigating the aisles in search of some electronics and snacks. Headphones on, I was in my little world until I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around to see a middle-aged woman and her equally unpleasant-looking husband. Let's call them Karen and Kevin. "Excuse me, young man. We need help finding the TVs," Karen demanded, not even a hint of a please in her voice. I was a bit taken aback but managed to reply, "Oh, I don't work here, but I think the TVs are over in electronics, on the other side of the store." Karen and Kevin exchanged annoyed looks. "Don't be lazy, just show us where it is. It's your job, isn't it?" Kevin chimed in. Trying to keep my cool, I reiterated, "I really don't work here, I'm just shopping like you." I pointed at my casual clothes, hoping it would get through to them. And that's when things escalated. Karen, with a voice that could curdle milk, said, "Stop lying and do your job, or I'll have you fired." I was about to respond when Kevin decided to get physical. He grabbed my wheelchair and started pushing me towards the electronics section, completely ignoring my protests. I was in shock. Who does that? "Let me go," I demanded. And that's when Karen, not to be outdone by her husband's audacity, leaned in and yelled right in my face, accusing me of being rude and unhelpful. In the chaos, she actually grabbed my arm, squeezed it tight enough to hurt. It was insane. Thankfully, this commotion caught the attention of other shoppers. A young couple rushed over, asking loudly what was going on. Karen, playing the victim card like a pro, immediately spun a tale of how I was being uncooperative and even violent. But here is when the tide turned. An off-duty police officer who had been shopping in the next aisle came over to see what the fuss was about. He listened to both sides, then turned to me and asked if I was okay. I explained the situation, still shaken, and to my relief, few other bystanders corroborated my story. The officer turned to Karen and Kevin, and he told them, "You can't force someone to help you, especially when they have clearly stated they don't work here, and you certainly can't lay your hands on anyone. That's assault." Karen and Kevin's faces went white. The officer took their IDs and started talking about prison charges, which finally wiped the entitlement off their faces. Meanwhile, a young couple who had first come to my aid stayed with me, making sure I was okay. The Walmart manager arrived, apologizing profusely for what had happened and offering me a gift card for the trouble. I was just glad it was over. Karen and Kevin were escorted out by the police officer, still trying to argue their way out of the situation but getting nowhere. As they left, Karen shot me a look that could kill. But by then, I was surrounded by people who had my back. The young couple who helped me introduced themselves as Caleb and Jenny. They were incredibly kind. Caleb even joked, "Looks like you got yourself a free bodyguard service today." We all laughed, the tension finally breaking. After that ordeal, I was more than ready to finish my shopping and head home. Caleb and Jenny insisted on walking me to the checkout, making sure I didn't run into any more wild Karens. This whole experience was surreal. I couldn't believe how entitled and aggressive some people could be, especially towards someone with a disability. But it also showed me how much good there still is in the world. Strangers stepped in to help when they saw someone in trouble, and that officer didn't hesitate to do the right thing. So to everyone reading this, let's try to be more like Caleb and Jenny and that officer. The world could use more people like them. It's been long enough and I doubt they are going to come after me, so here goes. I adopted a full-bred husky in the Pacific Northwest. We named him Toby, but after a while he developed the name Real Big Toby. He wasn't a huge husky or malamute, but boy did he look beautiful, and boy was his personality real big. He had one blue eye and one brown eye, which never failed to trip people out. On top of that, he was a huge ham. Loved attention, and would actually talk to you about how his day was going. It got to the point where it was kind of stupid to put him on a leash. I would tell him to stay when I went into class, for example, and he'd be passed out or getting the chicks to scratch his belly when I came out. Every time. The dean of the college even knew him on a first-time basis and started to bring his dog in to work after watching Real Big Toby do his thing. At the time, I lived in a mountain town, attended college, and was an avid mountain biker, so having a dog that would happily and easily do 30 miles in a day was cool. He would follow us everywhere we went. My mountain bike was my only source of transportation, so we became very in tune with one another. He was a husky, after all, so you could tell when he ran that this was exactly what he was born to do. Toby was such a super good boy. He listened, paid attention, and never left my side. He had a seat designated for him on a deck at the local coffee shop, which meant you had to walk by him and try to resist giving him a scratch if you wanted to go inside. It got to the point where just about everyone in this fairly small town got to know Toby on a first-name basis. Every once in a while, on mountain bike runs, we would get separated or Toby would just get sidetracked on a side down the hill. It was such a small town that in a few times it happened, he was back with me by the end of the day. The police all knew him from around town, the pound knew him, so if anyone called, they would just give them my number. One day it happened again. He got lost on the way down the hill, but only this time he didn't come back. No call, nothing. For days. It got to the point where I started asking around town. If you've ever lived in a small town, you know. It's hard to keep a secret. After about a week, a friend says he saw Toby and tracked the guy down and gave him my number. He never called. After searching, trying to find this guy, I finally got a breakthrough. He worked at the college. Now, I'm aware how stupid people can be when they receive an animal. Toby was ripped. You could see his muscles bulging out of his fur. He didn't have an ounce of fat on him because, you guessed it, he was in excellent shape. I fed him mostly a raw diet, and what kibble he did get was the best you could buy. The first thing out of this guy's mouth was to tell me that he's keeping my dog. You don't take care of him. You didn't even feed him. And he's such a good dog. He will be better off with me, he said. I became enraged. Well, like I mentioned, he worked at the school I attended. I also mentioned that the dean handed up with Toby on a nearly daily basis. I didn't mention I had the dean's home number. So a cold Saturday morning resulted in Toby being returned to me later that day. This guy had a nerve to, along with Toby, bring me a 50-pound bag of the crappiest store brand of dog food you could buy. I bought you this so you could feed him. Rage. Come to find out, this guy was in charge of a research project for the school. It was very easy to figure out where his office was. I went to his office with a plan of returning his food and chewing him out in front of his colleagues. He wasn't at his desk, so I did the most natural thing I could possibly do. I turned a 50-pound bag of dog food upside down on his desk, computer, and stacks of papers to the point where it formed a perfect mountain on top of his keyboard. Truly an awesome sight. Knowing loose lips sink ships, I didn't tell anyone but my close friends. The school brought misconduct charges against me. The hearing was in front of a board of other students and staff, and well, I don't know what happened to the bag of dog food. I was telling the story to a bunch of guys and one of them asked me for the bag. That's the last I saw it. All charges were dropped. The jerk that tried to steal Real Big Toby had it much worse. 50 pounds of dog food on top of your research project, as it turns out, doesn't bode well with management. For reasons unknown, 2 days later he was fired from the college. Not only did they fire him but put a restraining order on him, and had to change the locks to the building. Don't mess with real Big Toby. My friend was stationed in Korea at the time on a 3-year tour. He had IP'd, his wife is Korean, when a new warrant officer came in approximately 6 months after his arrival. My friend never really cared for this officer, however, he dealt with it. It was a known fact within the office that this officer was married with a family back in the States. Well, shortly after arriving in Korea, the warrant officer met a young 20-year-old Korean girl who he began dating. They dated quite a bit and everyone kind of turned a blind eye. This is actually illegal in the military. Before I say anything, please note I married a lovely Korean woman and I'm very happy with her and think Korean people are great. With this being said, because of how Korean society treats school/education, young Korean people generally lack the relationship maturity when it comes to dealing with the opposite sex. As an American, dating at 14 or 15 years old is not uncommon. My first girlfriend was at 13. I don't think that is unusual. My wife's first boyfriend was at 21. And most of her friends are right around that age group. Many Korean girls that I know first boyfriends came in around the age of 20 to 22 years old, which means this girl first boyfriend was this officer. She didn't have the relationship maturity/experience to see everything. Not saying Korean people are immature, however, I just thought that point needs to be clarified. In fact, they are very hardworking. Well, it really surprised everyone, especially my friend when this officer proposed to this girl. My friend got extremely worried at this point, because what was this guy doing? Was he really this stupid? Well, he still turned a blind eye. It was time for the officer to go back home. And by this time, the girl had moved all of her stuff to the officer's home. The officer had all of her belongings packed up and sent back to the USA. The officer brought the girl to the airport to get on a flight. This girl went out and got her passport, told her parents she was moving to America, and dropped everything in her life for this guy, who she didn't even know he was married to. Well, they get to the airport and it's her first time at the airport. They walk around, grab a coffee and so on when he tells her he has to go to the bathroom. He grabs his bag and off to the bathroom. She waited for him for approximately 30 minutes before she decided to start looking for him. She spent a good 45 minutes checking for him, asking around if anyone had seen him. She got airport security involved about 2 hours later, but they weren't much of a help. She was in tears. She of course saw the worst. Something terrible had happened to the love of her life. She called my friend in tears. My friend was obviously confused and a flight had been scheduled to leave 2 hours ago. What happened? He handed the phone to his wife so she could speak Korean and he saw his wife's face go from a face of concern to confusion and then he knew. Her face became angry. No, angry is a nice way of saying this. She was pissed off at this comeback. I'm sure at this point she'd like nothing better to cut him off. His wife explained everything to my friend. The officer had abandoned his girlfriend/future wife at the airport. Not only did he ditch this girl in the airport with the pretense of living with him forever, he also took all of her stuff to America. My friend rushed off to the airport, LNC drive approximately 3 hours to collect her. On the way, he took the time to make a few phone calls. He had one of his soldiers even pull the officer's home phone number. Let's just say my friend had a very interesting conversation with the following individuals. Commander of the officer's next unit. His wife. I'll let you assume how those conversations went. Suffice to say that the officer was discharged from the military and received a court-martial. Here's what I know what happened for a fact. He got divorced. Alimony/child support. He got kicked out of the military. He lost his retirement. This was worth millions of dollars over the course of a lifetime. The revenge was more of a moment of opportunity rather than planned, but I'm enjoying it all the same. The setup. About 25 years ago, I bought a car and also made the idiotic mistake of buying the extended warranty. The warranty was touted as a bumper-to-bumper warranty that included everything that might break. About 10 months into owning the car, it started exhibiting ignition system issues. I took it in and it was a coil. They replaced it at no charge and everything was fine. 3 months later, I had the same issue. Took the car back to the shop where I had purchased the car and told the manager what was happening. He said he'd check it out and asked me to sign a shop order just like last time. I get back to the shop a few hours later and the manager says it was a coil again and that I owed $158 for the part and labor. I asked him about the extended bumper-to-bumper warranty and his exact words were, "A coil is a standard maintenance part and the car is over a year old." Now, I had owned several cars and I have never had a coil go out on a single one of them. I asked him about the fact that he had replaced that same part just a few months ago and was told it had a 30-day warranty and it was no longer covered. I then asked to see the shop order I signed and all I had agreed to was the $25 diagnostic fee. I told him to put the old part back in and I wasn't paying squat, except the diagnostic fee to which I had agreed. When I pulled out my credit card to pay, he demanded the payment in cash. I was getting paid tomorrow, I was poor back then, so I didn't even have $25 in cash at that moment. I called a friend and he brought me the cash. I got in my car with a manager shouting expletives at me. The car ran, but it ran really rough, but I was able to get it to an auto parts store. I bought a coil and installed it in the parking lot of the store, inside of 10 minutes. The aftermarket coil cost me $12 and it lasted until the car died from being driven for 7+ years. I contacted Ford after that incident and a coil should have been covered by my warranty. They asked me if I wanted to pursue getting my $25 back and to have a genuine Ford part put in instead of my $12 aftermarket part. I told them no because the car was running fine. The opportunity. As you may know from my other post, I work in the computer industry. One of my clients is an auto dealership. Well, a shop manager moved on to bigger and better things and a new shop manager was hired recently. Lo and behold, it was the same guy that was a Ford shop manager that tried to rip me off. I never remembered his name back then, but I know it now. We will call him Lenny. Well, Lenny was all smiles and obviously didn't remember me from that incident many years ago. For several months, I worked on his systems in a shop and everything has been going great. I did notice he tried to pull the same crap he pulled with me on customers, but I stopped that by going to the owner. I told the owner about my issue with him in the past and that I noticed similar arguments when I was working on the systems in the shop office where the customers would pay. The owner said he'd watched the situation and it seems to have stopped. A few months ago, Lenny asked me if I could take a look at his home computer as there were files he couldn't access anymore. I said sure and asked him to bring it to work. I picked his system up at work and took it home. When I turned on the system, it was obvious that he had gotten one of the ransomware Trojans. I pulled the plug on the system and pulled the hard drive. I then called Lenny and asked if he had any backups. Amazingly, he did. I picked those up at the dealership and took them home. I told him what had happened and let him know that the best possible course of action would be reload from scratch and restore from backup, to which he agreed. I also let him know that to get everything loaded and working the way it should would run close to $400. He also agreed to that. I had him sign a work order indicating the price and a labor to be done. The revenge. I finished the reload and restore and his computer is working flawlessly. I even installed Sophos from free home edition security software so he won't have that issue again. I took an invoice to the dealership and it was a little over $450 tax and all. He took out a credit card to pay me and I looked him right in the eye and said, "Cash only." Lenny looked a bit shocked and said, "I don't have that kind of cash at the moment and why are you demanding cash only?" I looked at him right in the eye and said, "Why did you demand cash only from a 20-something kid for a part that should have been covered under warranty?" He looked at me a bit longer and then recognized me. "You're the jerk with that escort." I just smiled and said, "When you can pay me cash, you can have your computer." And then I walked away. It seems Lenny hasn't been too successful in life as it has been several months and I still have not received any payment for his system. I did send him a letter that he has another 90 days to pick up his system or it'll be sold and parted out to pay his outstanding balance. Last time I was in a shop, he asked me to please accept a credit card and I told him to go get a cash advance. So I used to work at McDonald's and we'd change toys every month or so. We'd market movies and shows with toys as most people would know. Sometimes we would just have kids' toys like My Little Pony or Shopkins. We had a policy that the toys were not boy or girl, since sometimes girls wanted the monster truck or a boy wanted the pony. I didn't have a problem with it since I'm a girl and I love Transformers and saw that are traditionally boy-marketed toys. We'd have to ask something like, and does your child want the Hot Wheels or My Little Pony toy? That way the child can ask for what they want. It was nice to see some parents were being open-minded and getting their kids whichever toy they liked, but some parents did not. So one month we had My Little Pony and Transformers. I love Transformers and I watched them when I was a kid with my brother. Mind you, this was the original cartoon that aired in 1984. Every chance I got. So when the toys were released, I'm not ashamed to say that I bought them all. I was working the front counter and taking orders when a mother and her daughter came up. They ordered their food and when a Happy Meal rolled up, I turned and asked the little girl which toy she wanted. I like doing this because a pity side of me doesn't want to go through the parents. The little girl said she wanted the robots, aka the Transformers toys. I was so excited. Another little girl liked Transformers, but my happiness was deflated when the mom said, "That's a boy toy. You're not a boy." I was fuming. My head would have exploded. I had so much to say at the moment, but I couldn't. Not to mention the look on that little girl's face crushed me. Memories of being picked on for liking Transformers and Power Rangers filled my head. I begrudgingly selected the other toy, which was the MLB toy. Now, keep in mind that these toys have to be small to fit the box. Otherwise, it won't close. Just after I finished her order and two others, my manager told me it was time for my break. There was one last toy on that Transformers list I was going to buy. When getting my food ordered, I saw that the woman and her kid were getting their food. After I got my order taken, the woman came back to the counter. "Are these the only toys you have?" the manager says. "For right now, yes." "These are tiny. Is this all there is?" The manager, a little shocked. "Yes, that's how they come." The lady then ranted that she should get two of them as the toys before were bigger and the price of the Happy Meal was too much for such tiny toys. They argued for a bit before the woman stormed back to her table. Looking at the toy in my hand, I had the most perfect idea. I walked over to the table and handed the Transformer toy to the little girl. I will always remember the pure look of joy on her face. I even remember it was Bumblebee. "Your mommy said you needed another toy, so you can have mine. I hope you like it." The little girl smiled and I, crab you not, said, "I got the pony and the toy I wanted." I felt so happy at that moment. This happened about 20 years ago. I lived about 40 miles away from my office and did a daily commute. Several people at the office did the same thing. I usually worked 7 to 4 just so I could skip the bulk of rush hour traffic. I don't remember exactly how or what happened, but basically after work one day, my minivan decided to quit working. Best I can remember, it was acting weird. Some kind of transmission problem and just quit going. Luckily, this happened between my office and the interstate ramp. Everything else with the van was fine. No engine problems and so on. It was only about 5 years old at the time, and I never had any trouble with it. I deduced it was a transmission problem. Everything runs fine, it just decided not to go anywhere on putting gear. Took the transmission shop out of the phone book that was not too far away and had it towed up there. Waited around when they took a look at it and said yeah, they could fix it. Don't remember the exact quote, but it was probably somewhere around $800 to $1,000 for the job. Okay, I don't have that much cash in the bank, but that's what credit cards are for. They have got the van, I'm stuck, what else am I going to do? They wouldn't take me 40 miles home, but they would give me a ride locally. I had them drop me at a motel near my office, so I could at least walk to work the next day. I got a ride home with a guy from work the next day, and then carpooled for a day or so until the van was fixed. Couple days after I drop it off, the shop calls and I go to pick up the van after work. The shop owner gets in the car with me while I give it a test drive. It goes, but yuck. Making noise, still not right. So I tell him to try again. This is going to be a hassle. Another day, another carpool. Next day, get the call, come pick it up. Okay, drive fine, no noise. Sounds like he got it fixed. Pull out the credit card and the owner is like, we don't take credit cards. Cash or checks only. Well, I don't have my checkbook with me. I don't have the cash. Ring the office and catch a ride home again with one of the guys working late. The malicious compliance part. I don't have the money to pay the shop, but I do have my latest CC bell. The one with the little checks attached to the bottom of it. I just fill out one of those checks, take it to the guy the next day, he accepts it, and I get my van back. Here is the fun part. I get a call from the guy later and he's telling me the bank won't cash the check. They tell him it's from a credit card company and he can only deposit it. But he doesn't want to do that because he's overdrawn at the bank, asking me again if I have cash. And I told him I already gave him a check. He's complaining to me he's overdrawn at the bank and they will take that out of his deposit. Not my problem, dude. Not my problem. Sweet revenge for all the hassle.